A very good morning to all the panelists and the participants. I am Anil Kathar, Young Professional Center for Hill Area Development, GMR Division NIDM, and I am the moderator of today's first day of 3 days training program on disaster management. On behalf of National Institute of Disaster Management, Ministry of Home Affairs, and Oil India Limited, I welcome you all to the first day of 3 days online training program on disaster management. The objective of this 3 days training program is to enhance the capacity of stakeholders of the hydrocarbon sector for disaster preparedness, prevention, and mitigation. Hydrocarbon sector is one of the core industry and backbone of any country's economic development. We are one of the major driving nation. The role of this sector in the evolution of a nation is indisputable, but opportunities and challenges are two sides of same coin. It is vulnerable to risk posed by anthropogenic activities as well as natural hazards. When we talk about anthropogenic activities, it includes inappropriate maintenance, inadequate design, heavy leakage, riots, and so on. And when talking about natural hazards, since India is vulnerable to a numerous hazards due to its unique geoclimatic attributes, consequently, the infrastructure related to hydrocarbon sector is prone to diverse hazards like earthquake, floods, cyclones, tsunami, landslides, and so on, respective to their geographical location. The natural hazards can severely impact the installation, pipelines, and other infrastructure related to the sector and cause NATAC, natural hazard triggering technological disasters. Incidents such as explosion, fire, beside release of toxic and radioactive elements, and can cause enormous loss of lives and properties beside degradation of our environment and as well as health issues. So it is utmost important to strengthen the resilience, to strengthen the preparedness of such a vital sector against these disasters. This 3 days online training program is an attempt to develop better understanding about hazard vulnerability, hazard risk, appropriateness of hydrocarbon sector, and to discuss holistic multi-hazard management strategies for the sector. We will be having distinguished speakers throughout the training program who will be enlightening us with their wisdoms. Today, there will be 2 sessions, inaugural and technical one. The inaugural session will be graced by the presence of Sri Sushil Chandra Mishra, Managing Oil India Limited, and Professor Surya Prakash, Head GMR Division, NIDM. For technical session, we will be having panelists, namely Professor Surya Prakash, Head GMR Division, NIDM, Shri Dilip Kumar Das, Resident Relief Executive, Shri Prashanta Borkoti, Executive Director, HRA, and Ms. Aarti Das, General Manager, L&D from Field Headquarters of Oil India Limited. Now, I would Prakash, GMR Division NIDM, for his opening address and to set the context of this 3 days training program. Over to you, sir.
Thank you, Anil. Am I audible?
Yeah. Yes,
Anil,
yes, sir.
Okay, good morning to all. First of all, my good morning to all the dignitaries and the delegates of this 3 days online training program being jointly organized by Oil India Limited and NIDM. I welcome you all on behalf of both the institutes and on my personal behalf. This particular program has actually originated after the Bagyan oil fire, which took place on 27th May and continued for almost more than 3 months, where a lot of interventions were required and the highest level of attention was invited. Honorable Prime Minister Shri Narendra Modi himself also held a meeting on this on 18th of June. And he discussed this matter, emphasized on the fact that we need more of training and capacity enhancement for disaster risk reduction and resilience in the oil and gas sector. as my colleague Anilji has said, in general, we have been following it almost in all the sectors. And this was very well outlined in our Sendai framework for disaster risk reduction during 14th to 18th March 2015, when the Third World Conference on Disaster Risk Reduction was held in Japan at the place called Sendai. We recall it that when on 11th March 2011, we had a big tsunami in Japan, which actually turned into a triple disaster, joint with earthquake, tsunami, leading to nuclear disaster at Fukushima. At that place, this was discussed internationally. More than 6,000 delegates were there. Government of India had also sent its delegation, and led by Union Home Minister at that time, Shri Rajnath Singh ji. And we had agreed on the implementation of Sendai framework for disaster risk reduction, where we had outlined actually 4 priority actions and 7 targets. We'll discuss it later on. But briefly, I would like to tell that during this 2015, we had 2 more events that took place. One of them was Sustainable Development Goals. That not only development should be fast and good in favor of humanity and society, environment as well, but also sustainable for future generations. So that point was emphasized through 17 goals, which were given in Sustainable Development Goals. And thereafter, we had one international agreement on climate change, Paris Climate Agreement COP21, where Honorable Prime Minister had gone and also again highlighted the extremities of weather due to climate variabilities, which are very fastly changing because of anthropogenic interventions. So now in oil and gas sector, we are looking into the energy areas. Is also actually consuming the hydrocarbons, which lead to more of carbon dioxide and climate changes as well. So we will be looking at from all the 3 perspectives. Plus this more the use of energy, more is the urbanization. So new urban agenda also took place during 2016. And this is actually exposing our vulnerabilities to the threats of the natural hazards as well as technological and anthropogenic hazards. Besides that, we have biological, radiological, chemical, and industrial disasters. Currently, I think I need not put more emphasis on all types of such disasters, because we are affected by pandemics and no one is left in this. Every sector has been affected badly, its economy and its functions, infrastructures also, because of non-functional periods during lockdown, and accompanied by other disasters. Today even we have this Nivar cyclone in the southern part of our country, particularly the Tamil Nadu area, which has been predicted and is underway. So we had Amphan cyclone also in the West Bengal area. A lot of damages were caused during the pandemics also. So challenges are multifarious and multidimensional, and it is also applicable to our oil and gas industry also. As I pointed out, when this Bagyan fire happened, it's also a loss of huge resource in terms of our petroleum and gas resources. And these oil wells blowouts and fires are very common if proper care is not taken care. So in the oil and gas sector, the concerned agencies do have their operational risk management or occupational risk management trainings. However, they don't have trainings related to disaster management. And after the Prime Minister's address on 18th of June, our Honorable Member Secretary, Shri GVV Sharma ji, from National Disaster Management Authority, he had also followed up the matter with the Secretary, Ministry of Petroleum, And he emphasized that all the PSUs under the MOPNG, they must undertake disaster management trainings or include disaster management into their curriculums of the trainings so that all human resources, their capacities are enhanced in terms of disaster risk reduction and resilience. So NIDM was also given a responsibility as per Disaster Management Act. It was also approached. A copy of the letter was sent to Executive Director NIDM. Being a nodal faculty for the MOPNG, the letter has come to me and I followed up with almost all the PSUs. And from here and also we had received the requests. Based on these mutual discussions, we have been organizing now webinars and online trainings to begin with. Now, this is the first, I would say, zero level training to initiate the issues related to disaster management in oil and gas sector. Since you are well aware about your own sector, we cannot teach you about your own sector. However, we have to actually inform you about our disaster management provisions, which are mandatory to be implemented by all sectors, including oil and gas. Honorable Prime Minister actually gave us further directions after the Sendai framework when the 7th Asia Ministerial Conference, that was the first post-Sendai Asia Ministerial Conference held in Delhi. He gave a 10-point agenda for disaster risk reduction. The first principle for disaster risk reduction, he was saying that all development sectors must imbibe the principles of disaster risk reduction and resilience. So this is the first principle, and fifth principle was utilizing the state-of-art technologies for disaster risk reduction. And also the ninth principle was that let's not lose the opportunities to learn from the disasters that had happened in the past or are happening today. So he gave a lot of good directions. Those 10-point agenda also we had followed and conducted several online webinars and trainings during this pandemic period, because physical trainings are not possible at the present time. So with these words, I would say that we would expect all our PSUs, including Oil India Limited, to include disaster management into their curriculums of the training, as well as in the functions of their employees and the management, so that this issue is well addressed. Because in disaster management, we say if we invest 1 rupee in prevention and mitigation, it saves us at least 10 rupee in response and recovery. Huge amount of resources lost and a lot of investments are done in restoration, rehabilitation and recovery mechanisms. So for oil and gas sector, I discussed with several, some changes are certainly required. Some organizations did have their emergency risk and disaster management plans, but they were mostly focusing on their operational parts, not on other kinds of risks which may be prevalent and may affect the industry at large. And it is well structured industry, well established industry, and had been going on well, but certain changes as per prevailing conditions are required. We normally say that past and present are key to the future. Whatever has happened in the past is likely to happen in the present, or whatever is happening today is likely to happen in future. But this is not completely true, as outlined by our Principal Secretary to Honorable Prime Minister Dr. P.K. Mishra ji during his recent lecture at IIT Roorkee. He said we are fast changing, so conditions do not remain the same. So these variability will result into emerging threats and new challenges and new risks. So let's look into those things and have these programs together, discussions. And the new idea of, as per Disaster Management Act also, is that we will be following those 4 priority actions and 7 targets which will be monitored at the national level in all these sectors. And the National Disaster Management Plan was initially released in 2016 by Honorable Prime Minister and revised in 2019. Actually has outlined certain things which has also to be followed up. All the disaster management plan by all the sectors at all levels have to be in existence and in enforcement, so that you can follow up activities and appropriate budgets are to be given. For all those things we will discuss as parts of the provisions, and I will inform you how our disaster management system is functioning, so that you can go ahead with say in sync with or synergize your activities with our national and state and district level or local level of disaster management system, which is legal as per Disaster Management Act 2005. With these words, I will thank all for joining us on this occasion and wish all the best for the training program. Thank you very much. Anil, back to you.
Thank you, sir, for your insightful delivery and setting the ambience of this 3 days honoring training program. Now, I request Sri Sushil Chandra Mishra, Chairman and Managing Director, Oil India Limited, to say few words on behalf of Oil India Limited. Over to you, sir. Chandra sir, are you there? Sir, you are not audible. Sir, we are not able to hear you. Sir, I think you are having some network issue.
जब एकदम स्लो हो गया उसके बाद से
Excuse me, sir, man. Can you hear me?
Yes, sir.
I am the RC of All India from Field Headquarters, Duliajan. I think
Okay.
CMD sir has some problem, technical
Yeah.
problem. So you can go ahead. Whenever he is free, he will come and join.
Okay, sir.
So honestly, I think we can start with the Act provisions. Let's inform everybody about the Disaster Management Act and its various sections so that
Okay,
they
sir.
can follow up accordingly, no? Okay.
Yes, sir.
And meanwhile, when he joins and it comes okay, we will have his address in between, okay?
Okay, sir.
Yeah, after the first presentation also we can have the address,
Okay, sir.
right?
Yes,
So
yes.
give me the link to share.
So now we move ahead for our technical sessions, and I request participants for their active participation in the technical session through their questions, which they can share via Q&A box. After each presentation, we will be asking your queries to respective panelists. As said by B. Franklin, by failing to prepare, you are preparing to fail. Recognizing the vulnerability of India to various disasters and to combat the adverse risks of those Disaster Management Act in 2005 that restructured the entire disaster management practice in the country. To enlighten on this topic, I request Professor Surya Prakash, Head GMR Division, NIDM. Over to you, sir.
Thank you, Anilji. Is my PowerPoint visible, Anilji?
No, not yet, sir.
Now I've shared it.
It is showing it is starting to share content.
Okay. While it comes up, let me begin with the share. Okay, that a lot of people think that we may have to change a lot in order to become resilient and reduce the risks. And we would require a lot of resources also. That's not completely true, because actually what we need is more of adaptation and modification of our lifestyles and activities in terms of prevalent situations that exist and can become a cause for threats to our life, to our economy, to our livelihood, or to our properties or assets, infrastructures and services. तो किसी शायर ने कहा है कि नजर बदलो नजारे बदल जाएंगे, नजर बदलो नजारे बदल जाएंगे, सोच बदलो सितारे बदल जाएंगे, कश्तियों को बदलने की जरूरत नहीं है यारों, दिशा बदलो किनारे बदल जाएंगे. So let's move from risks to the resilience. Okay, so that is what I wanted to just say, that there is a need more to change our attitudes towards the existing risks, right, in order to handle them well, rather than changing everything, the whole system. That's why when we came up with the Disaster Management Act, we did not consider separating separate number of institutions. Existing institutional setups, they were considered to become the force for disaster management. However, certain changes were surely required, which has been done. So Anilji, now my PowerPoint is visible.
Yes, sir.
Now let me go ahead with that. Now this particular session is focusing on the Disaster Management Act, where the roles and responsibilities of all stakeholders have been well defined, including the ministries, central ministries, state government, central government, and the local level governments and local authorities. So I will go with that. But before I proceed ahead, now we have Prime Minister's mass campaign, Jan Andolan, for appropriate behavior in COVID-19 situation. This is very, very important. 3 Sutri Karyakram, which he has said, 3 wear your mask properly, very much important. Whenever you are in any public place or in contact with any other person, then kindly do wear your mask properly. Second, follow face and hand hygiene. Wash your hands regularly and thoroughly. That is very important, regularly and thoroughly, because we cannot avoid face where it is but natural that most oftenly we are touching our faces. So the virus from surfaces that we touch can go from our hands to our body. So therefore, we must sanitize or wash our hands frequently, regularly, and thoroughly. The other recommendation which I am going to say is avoid touching eyes, nose, and mouth, where the virus can enter into your body. We are stating this, but it is not completely possible sometimes because of our natural habits. The third, next one is keep social distance, safe distance of 2 meters. Safe distance of 2 meters is very much required. So I would say that you must, follow this, and also sanitize all the surfaces and disinfect services wherever you are going. So these are the three things that you need to follow for staying safe and stay protected. So Prime Minister has given a colloquial that no carelessness until there is a cure. Now the vaccine is in the third stage, likely to come very soon, but he said in Hindi also, jab tak dabai nahi, tab tak dhilai nahi. So we will go with that first, and then the other thing. Now I come to other areas of disaster management. We have been recording the disaster events globally. We have a special office in the United Nations, which has been termed as United Nations Office for Disaster Risk Reduction. Earlier, it used to be UNISDR, United Nations International Strategy for Disaster Reduction. It has documented various disasters that happened in the period between 2000 to 2019, right? And you can see that China and USA had more number of disasters than India. However, the number of casualties had been more in India, whereas economic losses are in the developed countries. So what is actually making this difference is their awareness and preparedness against disaster situations. So Disaster Management Act actually has come up in India. Let me briefly give you a history of disaster management before I go with the Disaster Management Act. As I told you, United Nations had been actually having discussions on various issues related to disasters. And it started way back on 22nd December 1989, when they held a meeting about the developing countries that despite making their hard efforts are not able to reap the benefits. And that is happening because of disasters. So it a must that there is no systemic approach to disaster management, and they have little data and information on disasters. So times and again, they are facing the consequences of disaster. So they need to actually follow a systemic approach. And in that period, during that meeting, they decided that let's launch an international decade for natural disaster reduction. From 1st January 1990 till 31st December 1999, that decade continued. And Government of India also implemented that decade's plans. And we had lot of projects and programs related to disaster management. Japan is very much affected by various number of disasters, be it tsunami, cyclone, earthquake, and it was a developed country could afford to invest money for disaster risk reduction. And they had well because of the impacts they had earlier faced in World War II because of nuclear disaster in their country. And they proposed to United Nations that let's have a world conference on disaster risk reduction. And the first world conference was held at Yokohama in Japan, where they said, okay, small 3-year, 10-year projects or 5-year projects and programs looking into the causes of the disasters and also studying the factors affecting the occurrence of those disasters are not good enough. Because they found that there is no dedicated system within the nations to take care of disasters. So in 1995 at Yokohama, when the first world conference was held, they said, oh, let's have a strategy called Yokohama Strategy for a Safer World. And they were focusing mainly on natural disasters. And countries must start some system for disaster management. Government of India was also involved. And at Government of India, at that time, mostly it was considered floods, famines, as or drought as the major disasters. And Ministry of Agriculture and Farmers Welfare used to look after the issues related to disaster management. Ministry of Agriculture and Farmers Welfare, at that time in 1995, started with a center sector scheme and established a national center on disaster management at Indian Institute of Public Administration to look into those issues and address the issues related to training and capacity development of human resources for disaster risk reduction. This is all, these things have started at the global and the national levels. Now this National Center on Disaster Management, NCDM, at IPA started looking into the disaster related issues, frameworks, policies, plans, procedures, etc. And by the time it was working on, we had a super cyclone in 1999, 29th October, Odisha super cyclone, which killed more than 10,000 of people. And also in 1998, we had a major landslide called Malpa landslide, which killed more than 200 people, where the famous dancer Pratima Bedi was also killed. And it raised hue and cry in the parliament also. And they said, we need to have a system, well-designed system to deal with disaster-related issues. At that time, in 1999, Government of India, after Malpa, they constituted 3 task forces under Ministry of Science and Technology. And thereafter, in 1999, September, they constituted a high-power committee under the chairmanship of the then Secretary, Ministry of Agriculture, Shri J.C. Pantji. This high-power committee actually had number of members from all other disciplines, and they knew that it is not enough to deal with disasters from just agricultural perspective. There are many other disasters also. If you remember, we had 1991 earthquake in Uttarkashi, then 93 in Latur, then 97 in Jabalpur, 99 we had in Chamoli earthquake, and 2001 we had the Kutch earthquake, Gujarat earthquake. So several such events were taking place, and it was realized it is not enough to deal in this manner. So a system is required and act is required. So this high power committee had a lot of consultations for about 2 years. In 2001, they submitted their report. And in that report, they said that let's have a bill. Yeah.
Sir, there is some background noises, sir, in your speaker, sir, while you are speaking, sir. Maybe because of the... Yes, sir.
Is it?
Yes, sir.
But there is no sound around me.
Maybe, sir, because it is like touching your shirt, maybe, sir, because it is wireless, most probably.
Okay, just
yes,
see.
Sir. Now it is perfect, sir. Now it's better, sir.
Now it is okay. Okay. Thank you for informing. Kindly do inform if there is any interference. Now is it okay?
Yes, sir. Now it is better, sir.
Okay. One of the earphones actually dropped out, so maybe that captured some other sounds also. So now what I actually wanted to say is that after the 2001, there was Indian Ocean tsunami on 26 December 2004, and that also killed thousands of people, and almost more than 11 countries they were affected. So globally these things were going on, and this actually pressurized the government also to take serious, and therefore a bill was placed in both the houses of the parliament in 2005. Within of less than 2 months, the bill got signed by Honorable President on 23rd December 2005. So this is how this act has come up, and how the disaster management got evolved from global to national levels. Some of the dots I have just pointed out. There are many other things that had happened. In 2005, in fact, we had the second World Conference at Hyogo, which also outlined the Hyogo framework of action for disaster risk reduction from 2005 to 15. This Sendai framework is from 2015 to 30, which we are following now. So let me now elaborate on this, which was passed within a very short period of that it needs a multidisciplinary focus. Till now, we didn't have the subject on disaster management or specific degrees on disaster management. Recently, after these enactments, many universities and institutions, they started courses on disaster management specifically, with focus on prevention and risk reduction, which it was emphasized that we have been following ad hoc piecemeal reactive approach. And the act and we say that rather than following ad hoc piecemeal reactive approach, let's follow proactive, continuous, holistic approach, integrated approach. Then it mandated all concerned ministries and departments to drop their own plans. As our moderator Anil Kathad said, failing to plan means planning to fail. And this point was emphasized in the act also, that at all levels, all ministries, all departments, they should prepare their plans in accordance with the national plan. Now, these plans should not be segregated from each other. They should be linked with each other so that they can work in tandem with each other, so that there is no outlier. It provides institutional mechanism for monitoring and implementation. It has also envisages that how these plans, what should be the process of preparation, and how it should be approved and implemented, monitored. These plans need to be actually periodically revised and updated also according to changed situations. Under this act, three-tier system, which is our administrative system, we have a system at the national level, we have a system at the state levels, and the third level of system is at the district level. So national, state, and district level. So we have three levels of administration, and these three-tier disaster management system was also proposed and to be implemented within the country. Accordingly, we had under this act MHA, SDMA, and NIDM, and other such frameworks of institutions. In this act, we had 1 chapters and 79 sections. I'll be briefly giving you an overview of this. Copy of this act is available at nidm.gov.in, ndma.gov.in, and mha.gov.in, ndmindia.gov.in. All these are our Ministry of Home Affairs website, and NIDM website, and DMA websites. So the first chapter was about the preliminary, that is the aspects of the act where it would be applicable, and it was made applicable to all the territories under Government of India. Second chapter had almost about 11 sections, 313, which actually related to the constitution of a National Disaster Management Authority at the national level. And the next chapter, it has actually dealt in this tier system itself. The next chapter, third, was on states, state framework for disaster management, that is State Disaster Management Authority. Had again about 10 to 11 similar roles and responsibilities, and also it has defined the constitution of these authorities, and who can be the members, and how these members can be appointed, and what will be their roles and responsibilities under the Act, how they will function. Then 4 focused on district level Disaster Management Authority. Now the first authority, which was NDMA, was constituted to be to be chaired by Honorable Prime Minister at the national level. The State Disaster Management Authority at state levels to be chaired by the Chief Ministers. National Disaster Management had actually through the Act 9 members, and SDMA had 8 members, and DDMA 7 members, chaired by District Magistrate. This is how these constitutions were proposed. Then Chapter 5 actually pertained to measures to be taken by government for disaster management. Now, by government means the central government, the state government, the department, agencies falling under them, to take all measures, whether in terms of risk assessment, prevention, mitigation, management, everything. We'll also discuss how this Act actually gave us a legal definition for disasters and disaster management as well. Then the 73rd and 74th amendment in the Constitution, where decentralization was proposed, and powers were given to the local level authorities in terms of PRIs and ULBs, that is Panchayati Raj institutions and urban local bodies. These are the local authorities. So since they are also responsible for developments, and development can lead to disasters if they are not taken up appropriately in the right manner systematically. So local authorities, a chapter was given. They were also assigned the roles and responsibilities. Besides these authorities, empowered institutions at these 4 levels, right from the local level government, state government to the national government, there were 2 separate organizations were also proposed. One of them was under Chapter 7, Section 42 and 43, National Institute of Disaster Management. As a statutory body, it was envisaged under the Ministry of Home Affairs. Let me tell you that while I was telling you about the history and evolution, in 2000, after the earthquake in Gujarat, the matter was taken up at the cabinet level and the parliament, that the issues related to disaster confined to famines, floods and droughts, and it may not be good enough to be kept, disaster management to be kept under Ministry of Agriculture and Farmers Welfare. So a decision was taken to transfer the subject of disaster management in 2002 to the Ministry of Home Affairs. So the Ministry of Home Affairs was given the nodal responsibility for disaster management after 2002. In 2002, these decisions were taken, and after the decisions were taken, Ministry of Home Affairs took a review, and they came to know that there is a small center, National Center of Disaster Management working at IITA for this, and there is a center sector scheme. They continued with the center sector scheme, but in 2003, they upgraded this National Center on Disaster Management as National Institute of Disaster Management in 2003, 16th of October. So this institute was already upgraded, but the Act has actually given it a status of a statutory body and given it a separate mandate, but specifically defined under this Act, under sections 42 and 43. Then it was thought of that when the responses were taking place at different levels, there was equipped and trained force for responding to disaster situations. We were primarily using either the police force, fire personnel, fire guards, or our civil defense, home guards, security personnel, who were physically well, but not trained for specific kind of disaster situations. So the Act actually provided a provision of having a National Disaster Response Force, separately force for disaster management. And most of you may have seen it in several instances since 2005. So this was created as part of Chapter 8, Section 44 and 45. Then there were other issues which are related to finance, accounts, and audits. A separate chapter was given because disasters do not wait for routine procedures to be followed. So there specific provisions were provided for finance, accounts, and audit. And the Chapter 9, sections 46 to 50. Then you know that during even current pandemics, it's not easy to enforce or regulate some people's behavior. So there is a need to have provisions for offenses and penalties. For example, recently government decided that those who do not wear masks properly in public places, they need to be penalized, and they have put some penalty. Earlier it was 500, now it has become 2,000. So same things. Those who are creating hindrances or can create hindrances or go for rumors or spread panic and cause disorders, so they need to be handled. For that, Chapter 10 was there from section 51 to 60. These sections were very much implemented during this COVID-19, and most of the procedures and guidelines has actually an attachment of this Chapter 10 and also Chapter 11, 61 to 79 has actually dealt with all other issues related to transfer of powers or authorization and some other related matters. So this is how these chapters have been actually broadly classified and divided. Just showing you a glimpse of the Act, which has been notified on 23rd December 2005 with the title and the definition, which is very important. This is very important from disaster management perspective because you need to know what kind of situations will turn into disasters. So this disaster definition in the Act has been very certainly defined. It did not define any number, quantities. While defining that, it just said a catastrophe, mishap, calamity, or grave occurrence in any area arising from natural or man-made causes or by accident or negligence. You say that all kind of potential processes, activities, or causes, whether natural or human, whether intentional negligence or accidental, have been included in the definition. Second part of the definition is which results in substantial loss of life or human sufferings or damage to or destruction of property or damage to or degradation of environment. Second part is focusing on the degree of the damage, which is beyond substantial, means huge, extreme in nature. Now, third part is and is of such a nature and magnitude as to be beyond the capacity of the community of the affected area. So these are the three major components or elements of the definition of disaster. First, something causes harm or damage. Then the second is the degree of the damage or harm is too much. That third part is the capacity of that community. So communities' capacities will be variable depending on the socioeconomics and cultural, political conditions. Okay. So therefore, it has been a rational and subtle definition of disasters in the Act. Now, what is disaster management? Now, as I told you in the beginning, we are going by reactive ad hoc piecemeal approaches, where we did not have a continuum approach. Now you see this definition, which is stating that the disaster management doesn't start with the occurrence of a disaster. It states disaster management means a continuous and integrated process. Continuous and integrated process of planning, organizing, coordinating and implementing measures which are necessary or expedient for prevention of danger or threat of any disaster. So you can see that it has talked about integration, it has talked about continuity of the process of disaster management, it has talked about planning, it has talked about organizing, it has talked about coordination. Very, very important issues. Coordination is very much important because it's the weakest link. Because most people do not like to be governed by others. So the coordination is very, very difficult and tough task. And until and unless it is not practiced well before the occurrence of any disaster, you may not be able to handle it well. So it is again focusing on prevention of danger or threat. So it is saying better than cure, what we practice in health sector. And also, it is focusing on monitoring and preparedness. So, different sections under which I mentioned, there are 10, 11 sections in each of the chapters. Chapter 2, which is actually establishment of authority. It has been done in 2005. And meetings, how frequently such authorities should meet. It is well defined. It's not left to the their own willingness, but rather made mandatory that such meetings should be periodically held so that you can review the situations and take timely actions. Appointments of officers, then who should be appointed, how it should be appointed, powers and functions, what kind of powers it will have. So powers, you can imagine, it has been chaired by the country. So, and at the state level, the state chief minister, and if it is UT, it is the lieutenant governor. So those who are the most powerful have all the powers within their positions due to constitutional empowerments have actually been given that mandate. Advisory committees. Now these things actually, these bodies, authorities I just mentioned, they cannot function by themselves until unless they are supported by some executive committees or the advisory committees. Because the members will be very high levels. They will no doubt will very high experienced, knowledgeable to take decisions. However, the grassroots levels and the other levels works need to be taken up or by the respective line departments. So the executive committees at the national level, we have executive committee, which is chaired by Home Secretary. And this executive committee has secretaries of various ministries, almost about 18 members are there, secretaries, and who actually guide their own respective ministries and departments at the executive levels. So that's how this is being functional, and they then are made responsible to get the plans prepared, and then NDMA approves those plans. So this is how the powers and functions of the National Executive Committee have been defined. You may be remembering that in the recent pandemics, because biological disasters are actually, pandemics is responsibility that falls under Ministry of Health and Family Welfare. Secretary, Ministry of Health and Family Welfare actually initiated the activities for curbing the impacts of this pandemic. But then the powers were very much limited. So the chairman of the NEC, Home Secretary, gave the power of the chairman of NEC as per provisions of this act to Secretary, Ministry of Health and Family Welfare. So he was empowered to take any actions as per the act. So that's why this was well enforced, and we were able to contain this pandemic in time. Otherwise, the consequences have been much more severe than what we are actually facing now. And these committees also to be supported with small subcommittees. So all those things were given, and they were also given the mandates at the national level for national plan, at the state level for state plan, at the district level for district plan, and at the local level for local plans. So all these things will be getting repeated. And further, it was realized during the act that we were providing actually relief not in a proper manner, because this was given more in terms of sympathies than empathies, and they were not adequate in terms of their nature and character or magnitude. So therefore, minimum standards of relief were also defined and guidelines were made, and we have a national relief code where we the amount of assistance to be given. Then the Disaster Management Act, nodal authorities, ex officio, as I said, the chair, Prime Minister. So the policies are very important, which are actually statements of intention of the government. So these policies are also laid down by the National Disaster Management Authority. As I said to you, on 22nd October 2009, we had the National Policy on Disaster Management, which has a vision, objectives, and various chapters, in which one of the chapters is actually focusing on this training and capacity development also. And it's also looking into the multidisciplinary approach and development of culture of prevention, preparedness, mitigation, and efficient response, and as well as also utilizing the state-of-art technology. So all these things have been well outlined, which we'll be discussing at the later stages. So similarly, when your activities or industries falling under the particular state, the states has also a similar mechanism. We have at the NDMA levels or NEC levels. At the state also, you have the State Executive Committee, which is actually chaired by the Chief Secretary of the state. So why I'm pointing you out is when you prepare your own corporate plans, there have to be in sync with the ministries and departments' plans, if it is of national nature, or it is from the state level, it has to have a sync with this state. Okay, so that the activities and resources are shared and they can be well, effectively, and efficiently implemented. Similarly, because most of the activities, even within the states, they are done by the district level authorities, district level departments. So your services, they are provided, whether it is water or some other activities, district or local level authorities. So they have also their plans, and they also need to be involved. So depending on the level of the industry and the level of the programs and the plans and the projects, the competent and relevant authorities should be involved, and your plan should be shared with them so that it gets integrated and linked with them. So which is still not there. So by many of the corporate sectors. So I think because time is short, there are other presentation also, so I'll not go into more details of these. So measures, I would say, for the central government and departments, because we are dealing currently with PSUs and center. So I'll just highlight that. what the act envisages from the ministry or the department. Hello. Correct. ठीक 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 ठीक. Okay, told that the time is short, so just mentioning that any action would require funding. So this act has also given allocate funds for prevention of disaster, mitigation, capacity building and preparedness. Capacity building, even our 15th Finance Commission has allocated separate funds. So besides the National Disaster Response Fund, mitigation fund, there are funds for capacity building also. Now, as per Finance Commission, and in the annual budget also it says make provisions for financing activities related to disaster management plans and integrate that fund provisions into the annual budget and into the developmental plans. Not be separately, but that's why we call mainstream DRR into development, that the developmental projects themselves in their budgets should include the DRR activities and the provisions of the funds among them. So local level authorities training and jointly, because it's not only the corporate sector, but the local community also gets affected. So until unless you have, for example, if I see into oil and gas sector, you have onshore, offshore, you have upstream, midstream, downstream, on-site and off-site plans. So where you need to actually integrate all kind of stakeholders. So that local communities, which we learnt in the Bhopal gas tragedy, which happened on the night of 2nd December 1984, where communities were not actually educated and made aware or informed, and that led to more casualties. So that can be done by the corporate sectors. NIDM and other things, these you can find out, and this distribution of NDRF is across the country so that it is can easily access those areas and quickly access those areas and can pre-position themselves in the wake of any disasters. So misappropriation for funds, etc., also for as an offense and is being given. So I'll just skip up to this, and I will close this presentation in view of the shortage of available time, and others are waiting for this. I close it here, and Anilji, back to you.
Thank you very much, sir, for highlighting the initiatives taken for managing the disaster. Indeed, DM Act of 2005 has established a new era for disaster preparedness, prevention, and mitigation, and creating a disaster-resilient India. As mandated by the Act, it is responsibility of each department agencies to come up with this DM plan in accordance with the National Disaster Management Plan. So there are two questions. I will club both the questions. So one is from Sashidhan and other one is from Mohammed Sabitul. One is asking what are the types of disaster management, and other one to know how many casualties due to any disruption in India do we call it a disaster. Actually, he wants to know the norms to declare any unpleasant event as a disaster.
Anilji, in my presentation itself, I have actually, Anilji, sound is coming. Please, yeah. Am I audible now?
Yes, sir.
Okay, kindly switch off your video also. I think some problem in your video now. So friends, I actually pointed out in my presentation in the definition of disaster itself that there is no quantification of loss of life or economy which has been defined in the Act. Okay, so it's not the numbers, it's the extents. It's a rational approach which can vary. There may not be any casualty, but only economic loss. That can also be a disaster if it's to the extent that goes beyond the coping capacity of the affected community. There are three parameters. One is the hazard, which is being caused by various kind of catastrophes, mishaps or accidents of any nature that is mentioned by any chance, maybe negligence or intentional or accidental. Okay. Second, we have pointed out substantial loss of life, economy, or environment can be a when it goes beyond the coping capacity of the affected community. So we have hazard, we have vulnerability, we have capacity. These are the three actually elements which need to be weighed against each other, and then the concerned authority will declare it as a disaster. Okay. So the current situations of pandemics has been taken up as a disaster situation, and that's why most of the relief norms have been followed in that, and most of the funds have been provided under that. Okay. So don't look for just the numbers. It has to be decided by the concerned authority in view of the rationals. Okay. Is it
Thank
okay,
you.
Anilji?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Thank you very much, sir.
Yeah.
For next presentation, we have three speakers, namely Shri Dilip Kumar Das, Resident Chief Executive, Shri Prashanta Borkoti, Executive Director, HRA, and Ms. Aarti Das, General Manager, L&D from Field Headquarters of Oil, who will be providing insights on inclusion of DM training by oil for disaster risk reduction and resilience. Over to you, sir. Dilip sir, over to you.
Am I audible? Can you hear me?
Yep.
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Okay. Namaste to all. Good afternoon, and my greetings to all faculty members and participants and their distinguished guests. I'm indeed privileged to have been given an opportunity to speak on this occasion. And the growth of industries has led to an increased risk of occurrence of disasters. Disasters result in the loss of lives, loss of properties, livelihoods, and assets in different forms. Therefore, there has to be enough of efforts to make our country disaster resilient across all sectors. We all know Oil India is an E&P company under the Ministry of Petroleum and Natural Gas. We are engaged in exploration, production, transportation of crude oil and natural gas, and also production of LPG. E&P is a technology-intensive industry and is always subjected to some hazardous environment. There always exists a possibility of disaster. It is extremely important that we have an integrated approach of strengthening the disaster preparedness, mitigation plans, and emergency response. We have to leverage on the technology available to enhance the efficiency of disaster management efforts, and also possibly build on the local capacity and initiatives to enhance the risk reduction. We have to make use of every opportunity to learn from disaster, whatever has happened in the past. And to achieve that, there must be some studies on the lessons after each and every disaster. Now I can proudly claim that our company, Oil India, has a very robust safety management system in place. For example, we have health, safety, and environment policy in place approved by the top management. We have strong systems of audits like internal audits, external audits, surprise audits, pre-spot audits, pre-workover audits, and the like. We have more than probably about more than 1,000 numbers of SOPs in place, which are continually upgraded and reviewed. We have 4-tier safety committees right from pit level to the apex level. We have many various reportings in place, like the incident reporting, the accident reporting, the near miss reporting, etc. We do follow a number of statutory norms like those of DGMS, YSD, Petroleum and Natural Gas Regulatory Board. We have the IE rules, we have the Mines Act, the pollution control norms, and so many. Periodical mock drills, both on-site and off-site, are organized very regularly to practice the emergency handling of the company. Hazard studies, risk analysis, those are carried out to identify the hazards as per the relevant guidelines. And we also have a system of circulating some safety videos and safety alerts. So these are the things we have in place and some more. But all said and done, we cannot be complacent with any amount of systems or procedures. And we have to be always on our feet in our efforts to reduce and eliminate the risk or disaster. We need to keep on enhancing the capabilities of our workforce. And for that, probably the most important thing is we need to organize trainings for all the workforce. We need to keep on learning continually. Now, Bagjan has taught us many lessons. Now it's for us to document this. We need to ask ourselves what we did well, what we did not do well, and what could have been done better. It's a pleasure this day that we have an online program on disaster management conducted by National Institute of Disaster Management under the guidance of Ministry of Petroleum and Natural Gas. In fact, if I am not wrong, the disaster management plan of our ministry, MOPNG, has been updated. And the ministry has advised all CPSEs to include, as Sir had already said, the disaster management training in our regular curriculum of training institutes. And that should be done in consultation with NIDM. Today's program will certainly be of immense value in learning about roles and responsibilities of various ministries, departments, the agencies, as Sir has just now said. Also, probably we'll learn about major hazards, about disaster management in oil and gas production operations. I believe there is also some group exercises which will surely be of great interest. They'll be interesting and we can participate in learning. I'll take this opportunity to offer my sincere gratitude to the resource persons and also the moderators, and wish this program a very grand success. Hope our participants will take this opportunity to extract the maximum from this program. Wish you all the best again. Thank you very much. Namaste. Back to you, Anil.
Thank you very much, sir. Now I will request Sri Prashanta Borkati, Executive Director, HR and A, to say a few words on how DM trainings by OIL for disaster risk reduction and resilience is being taken up.
Well, good afternoon, everyone. It has indeed been a pleasure and an opportunity for me to really put up my points of view on this. First of all, I agreeing to what RC sir has rightly said, and we are very fortunate to have with us the faculties from the National Institute of Disaster Management who will be guiding us and taking us through the next couple of days. We are trying to reach out to each and every employee of the organization to ensure that disaster management is the in thing now. If you look at the last couple of 2 decades or so, there has been a huge growth in opportunities. With that, there is a quantum rise in terms of the reported incidents of disasters taking place across the globe. I think it's time we really need to understand the intricacies, the policies, the processes involved in managing effectively handling the issues in a much better way. I'm not only hopeful, but I'm confident that the kind of constraints that you have been put through in the last couple of 5-6 months with the Baghjan oil field primarily. I think there's been a lot of learning points. I think we are trying to capture those and effectively use that in the future so that we evolve our own disaster management plan. As a matter of fact, we are privileged that the National Institute of Disaster Management has been very forthcoming in their approach. I'm confident that we will be able to take it forward in times to come. Thank you all very much for this opportunity to speak a couple of words. Thank you.
Thank you very much, sir. Now I request Ms. Aarti Das, General Manager, L&D from Field Headquarters of Oil, to say a few words. Over to you, ma'am. Aarti ma'am, are you there?
Good afternoon, respected CMD sir, RC sir, EDHRA, Major General Manoj Kumar Dindal, DSM, ED NIDM, Professor Surya Prakash, Head GMRD, NIDM, and other resource persons from NIDM and participants from Oil India Limited. The aim of disaster management training is to build the capacity of the workforce to improve preparedness and response at all levels before, during, and after disaster, and to give all the components of movement the means to work together in a coordinated manner. The focus of disaster management training is generally on improving the technical skills of the participants, but also on personnel and team management. It aims to encourage an exchange of experience and knowledge and the creation of networks among the disaster managers. It also aims to improve coordination of disaster response and quality and availability of disaster management tools. In this regard, it was felt prudent that disaster management training is essential for all our workforce so that such incidents in future can be readily avoided, and if unfortunately happens, then mitigation can be done in more efficient way. Ministry and Petroleum and Natural Gas advise all the CPSCs to include disaster management training in the regular curriculum of the Training Institute in consultation with the National Institute of Disaster Management. Oil India Limited proactively took up the initiative and contacted Dr. Surya Prakash, Professor and Head of the General Meteorological Risk Management Division of NIDM for designing and training program for our workforce. After consultation and detailed discussion, NIDM came up with a 3-day online training program on disaster management for our executives and unionist employees. Eventually, the online training scheduled from 25th of November to 27 November 2020. The program design will cover topics like Disaster Management Act with roles and responsibilities of various ministers, departments, agencies, major hazardous and disaster management in offshore oil and gas production operations, NDRF, and emergency response in petroleum sector, logistics supply chain management, fire and emergency management, disaster management plan, policy and guidelines, etc. NIDM has organized group exercise which will be conducted online. We would thank Major General Manoj Kumar Mishra, ED NIDM, and Dr. Surya Prakash, Professor and Head of the Meteorological Risk Management Division of National Institute of Disaster Management for making the online training possible for Oil India Limited in such a short span of time. I would also thank the resource persons, namely Arvind Bhatia, General Manager and Head Head Emergency Management Training Group, ONGC Academy, Dehradun, Sri Anupam Srivastav, Commandant 05 BN NDRF, Lieutenant Colonel Dinesh Chandra Basist, Joint Director NIDM, Professor A.K. Tyagi, Professor Industry Fellow, NRG Business and Policy University, University of Petroleum and Energy Studies, UPES School of Law, Dehradun. We'd also thank the moderators of 3-day session from NIDM, namely Dr. Harjit Kaur, Sri Anil Kathait, and Mr. Raju Thapa. We look forward for an active participation for our workforce with the experienced resource person and make the online training a great success. Thank you.
Thank you very much, ma'am.
Anilji, can I come in for a minute? Anilji?
Yes, sure, sir, sure.
Actually, our CMD sir has some issue with the link, net problem. So he has sent a message. He has extended his warm regards to the faculty, and also he has wished all the best for this program. He has sent his wishes to all of you. Thank you.
I thank all the panelists, or the 3 panelists, for putting forward the perspective of Oil India Limited and the interventions they are taking to make Oil India Limited disaster resilient. As highlighted by Professor Surya Prakash in his opening address, Honorable Prime Minister of India in his 10-point agenda advocate to mainstream the DRR in each and every deployment activities. Also to leverage technology to enhance the efficiency of disaster risk management efforts, and most importantly, to ensure that the opportunity to learn from a disaster must not be wasted. Now, I request Dr. Harjit Kaur to enlighten the participant about the hazard, vulnerability, capacity, and risk assessment. Over to you, Dr. Kaur.
Is my PPT showing? Just a minute, Anil sir. Something is happening. I'm not able to share my content.
Dr. Harjit, close the screen and try once again to share the PPT.
Showing, sir. Anil sir.
Yes.
Sir, my PPT is visible because in my screen it's visible, sir.
No. You are not sharing anything.
Okay, sir, just give me a minute. I sign out and again sign in, sir.
It's showing it starting to share content.
Okay, sir.
Now it's visible.
Okay. Screen. Thank you very much for my introduction, and good afternoon, all the dignitaries. Before starting my presentation, it's our mandate and it's my duty to share the coronavirus prevention measures, as we have to follow some precautionary measures. Wear your mask properly, wash your hand with soap and water, avoid touching eyes, nose and mouth, keep social distancing. So 2 गज की दूरी और mask है जरूर. Fight against COVID-19. Today we are going to discuss about the HVCR, that is hazard, V for vulnerability, C for capacity and risk. We should know all these four terminology and how we will use these terms. Today we are going to discuss about the HVCR and the objective of the presentation are to recognize the risk and hazard at your working area, at your home and surrounding, to evaluate the different level of risk and to work as a team to prepare the materials that demonstrated during the previous lectures, like Professor Surya Prakash highlighted about the disaster and hazard and DMS. Now, what is hazard? According to the UN definition, it is a rare or extreme natural or a human-made event that threatens to adversely affected human life, property, activities, or the extent of causing a disaster. But when we refer to a hazard in relation to occupational safety and health, the most commonly used definition is a hazard is a potential source of harm or adverse health effect on a person's. So, according to the hydrocarbon sector, I'm just giving one example. If there was a spill of water in a room, then what water would present a sleeping hazard to a person passing through it. If access to that area was prevented by the physical barrier, then the hazard would remain, though the risk would be minimized. Now, type of hazards. Other than according to the natural hazard, if you can say, there are a different hazard, geological hazard, hydrological hazards, the different type of hazard. But in hydrocarbon sector, through different through a various paper I go through, and I found that there are some type of hazard in hydrocarbon sector. It may be a physical hazard, chemical hazard, biological hazard, and psychological hazard. So what is a physical hazard in this sector? It may be a noise and vibration that can both independently pose a significant health risk. Like example from the drill floors, shaker, sack room, generator, compressor, and mixer. And the typical approach where noise cannot be mitigated at the source or via engineering controls has been to establish noise control zones requiring the use of hearing protection based on area noise measurement. And various of radiation and thermal extremes are also relatively common on offshore platforms. Exposure to extreme heat and direct sunlight in tropical areas and to extreme cold in high latitude can become a significant source of health risk dependent on the geographical region of the world. Now, the chemical hazard. In this industry, benzene is a natural component of crude oil and natural gases. A few studies have reported that a benzene exposure, substances such as hydrogen sulfides are usually well controlled, but it has a carcinogenic effect. In the past, the composition of drilling mud had considerably toxicity for both the humans and the environment. Many epidemiological studies of workers in the petroleum industry have been conducted to help address whether there is an excess of mortality from cancer, or the vast majority of these have been limited to oil refinery petroleum worker exposure level to benzene, toluene, xylene, and ethyl benzene. Based on the personal air monitoring data are generally regarded as a low during regular activities. Higher exposure, usually less than a full shift duration, may be encountered during maintenance tasks when contaminant is broken or vessels need to be entered for cleaning. There has been also speculation that thermal exposure during early years of operation could be high. Such exposure has not been routinely assessed. Then there is a biological hazard. Mainly in this hydrocarbon sector, the biological hazard like a food poisoning outbreak that are a typical manifestation of the biological hazard in the offshore workplaces. Airborne diseases can spread rapidly through ventilation system on offshore installation because accommodation is pressurized and living space is usually at a premium. Then most important thing is the psychological hazard. Psychological hazards are different from other occupational hazards like noise or chemical, because the level of stress within an organization varies both rapidly and significantly over the time. There is some evidences that stress in an organization or a population is normal and often transient, and currently available data does not directly measure the stress, while interpretation is difficult and often. So this is all about the hazard type in the hydrocarbon sector. Now, what is disaster? As from the hazard definition, hazard lead to disaster. It is a serious disruption of the functioning of the society, causing the widespread human, material, or the environmental losses which exceed the ability of the affected society to cope using only its own resources. So this is that disaster and hazard lead disaster. This is a very good picture from where we can distinguish hazard, vulnerability, and disaster. Here, picture you can see the person is standing behind the hillock area, so that person is vulnerable due to hazard. So if the the hillock will fall down, then it's create a disaster because it's kill the person. So what is hazard and what is disaster? You can remind these three terminology from this picture. Now, what is vulnerability? According to the definition, vulnerability is the degree of losses to given element at risk resulting from the occurrence of a natural phenomena of a given magnitude. That is, vulnerability is expressed on a scale from 0 to 1. And from the previous picture, you can see that the vulnerability, a person is the vulnerable. So how we can assess vulnerability? This is the picture where we can assess vulnerability with two simple questions. That first question is, who are at risk? We have to find out the person who are at risk, that is your vulnerable population. Then what is at risk? So what is at risk is infrastructure, buildings, line, transportations, materialistic are the what is at risk infrastructure. So we need to find out these two questions to find out the vulnerability of the vulnerable population. The mostly vulnerable populations are women, old age people, children, physically handicapped people, mentally person, dependent of life support medicines, and the poor people living at the vulnerable areas, and also the animal. We need to take the ecological based approach. We don't have to focus only for the person or the human being. We also consider the livestock, cattle, animals. These are the vulnerable population. Any disaster. It may be a chemical disaster, it may be a natural disaster. The vulnerable infrastructure, with this picture, you can say if a flood occurred in the rural area or in the flood prone areas, mainly the kacha houses are more vulnerable areas, and lively assets such as the boat, nets, the documents, house and weak structure, crop, horticulture, and the drinking water resources also disrupted due to the flood, communication line, road, telephones, etc. were disrupted by the hazard, or you can say with the disaster. Find out the specific risk. First, we have to identify the hazard. Even in the group exercise, you have to identify the hazard, vulnerability, capacity, and risk. So first, we should understand these terminology. You have to find out hazard, vulnerability, and risk for your sector, because we are the specialist in other stream. But the person who are working in Oil India Limited or in this petroleum industry, they know more than us because they are practically experiencing these hazards. So what is specific risk? Is expected degree of losses due to a particular natural phenomena. It may be anthropogenic phenomena also, and it may be expressed by the product of hazard and vulnerability. That is a specific risk. So first we have to specify our hazard, because different type of hazards are there. So for this specific risk calculation, we have to identify a specific hazard, and due to that particular hazard, what are the vulnerable things? So that will lead to identify the specific risk. Now, element at risk. Even for the vulnerability assessment, the two questions that I have raised is who is vulnerable and what is vulnerable. So that two questions combine the element at risk. All objects, person, animal, activities, and the process that may be adversely affected by the hazardous phenomena in a particular area, that is element at risk. Na? So from this picture, this is the satellite imagery. I'm just giving one example how you can identify the element at risk due to a in particular area. From this satellite imagery, you can see this is from the sea area, or you can say the coastal areas. Here you can find if the cyclone happened in this area, so what are the expected damages due to the cyclone. So first thing you can here is airport I've mentioned, and harbor is there, residential, this building are the residential buildings, and after buildings and the agriculture, these are the infrastructure that may be damaged by the cyclone. And in the residential building, that maybe the population is living in that area, so that means the population is also affected. Like this way we have to identify and we have to map our element at risk. Total risk, how we can calculate risk is the product of hazard, vulnerability, and capacity. From this picture, you can easily find out risk is multiplication of hazard, vulnerability, and element at risk. If we are able to identify the hazard, vulnerability, and element at risk due to a particular hazard for your sector, then we are able to calculate the risk. Now, the capacity. Capacity is nothing, is the coping ability of a person to reduces the losses against a disaster. So that is our capacity, how we can fight. And response is what if a disaster is occurred or any emergency services and the public assistance during or the immediately after a disaster in order to save life, reduce health impact, ensure the public safety, and meet the basic substances need of the people affected. That is our response. And recovery, that is build back better. The restoration and the improvement where appropriate of fatalities, livelihoods, and living conditions of the disaster affected communities, including efforts to reduce disaster risk factor. So build back better is the proverb, or you can say this is the priority of Sendai framework 4, priority 4 of Sendai framework. Are prepared the knowledge and capacity developed by the government's professional response and the recovery organization communities and the individual to effectively anticipate, respond to, and recover from the impacts of likely, imminent, or the current hazard events or the condition. Even the training we are doing with the oil sector, this is also a part of a preparedness. So process of building our capacity to fight against a disaster. And common to HVCR analysis, the first thing, wherever you go, visual representation of important information. And what we do, just normally walking systematically in the community through the area, or you can walk through your work area and discussing on the various aspect of that area and identify the danger zones, vulnerable areas, and evacuation site, local resources used during the emergencies, human activity, contributing to the vulnerability, etc. So whenever we go for the HVCR analysis, we should keep in our mind that these questions, if we are moving or walking through some places, so we need to find out what is the danger to, what are the vulnerable, and from where we can rescue, the rescue area. So these are the things that we should find for HVCR analysis. And the common tool for HVCR analysis is that our group discussion is very much important thing, because every person have their views. So different person have a different perceptions regarding a hazard, disasters, or type of disasters. So discussion is a very much important thing to find out the hazard in your particular areas. Through your observation, we can do the interviews and prepare the questionnaires, and we have to find out the secondary data for our HVCR analysis. It may be for the flood, we have to take rainfall data, temperature, precipitation. So these are the secondary data. So like that, for your hydrocarbon sector, you have to find out what are the secondary data that will help out the risk, or to find out HVCR analysis, how we can do. This is all about the HVCR analysis, and the way forward of my presentation is to promote the multi-sectoral coordination mechanism that bring together all local agencies and organizations that can provide a central focus for cross-agency cooperation to reduce health risk and consequences of emergencies and disasters. We need to develop systematic approach for handling disaster risk reduction and advancement in science and technology to further strengthening HVCR analysis. So thank you very much.
Thanks, Dr. Harjit, for your wonderful presentation, providing insight on hazard, vulnerability, capacity, and risk assessment. There is one question for you. The question is, how recent advances in science and technology, such as remote sensing and GIS satellite data, help in HRVC analysis?
Okay, it's a good question, and it may be observed that advancement in information technology in the form of internet or GIS, remote sensing, satellite communication, etc. can help a great deal in planning and implementation of hazard reduction. For maximum benefit, new technologies for the public communication should be made use, and natural disaster mitigation messages should be conveyed through these measures, and GIS can improve the quality and power of analysis of natural hazard assessment, guide development activities, and assist the planner in the selection of the mitigation measures and others activity. And the remote sensing, on the other hand, it's a tool that can very effectively towards the identification of hazardous area and monitor the planet for its changes on real-time basis and give early warning to many impending disaster. And the communication satellite have become a vital for providing emergency communication and timely relief measures, integrations of space technology input into a natural disaster monitoring. So I think this will satisfy my...
Thank you, Dr. Harjit. So that's all for the technical session of first day of 3 days online training program on disaster management. Now, based on today's lectures, officials of Oil India Limited will be given assignment on hazard, vulnerability, capacity, and risk assessment. And to brief about the assignment, I hand over the mic to my colleague, Mr. Raju Thapa, young professional, GMR Division, NIDM. Over to you, Raju.
Thank you very much, sir. So for today's assignment, so is it visible, sir?
Yes.
So, dear participants, so for today's assignment, that is from the offline assignment, the title will be like hazard identification in an area and finding out the vulnerability of identify hazard in particular area. So basically what you have to do is, well, you just have to implement whatever Dr. Harjeet Kaur has just explained in very detail, like considering the area, like different area, whether you belong to the hilly area or the Indo-Gangetic plain or the coastal areas or the urban areas or the rural areas, wherever you are residing or wherever you take any one particular sample area, and assuming that area, you just have to initially you just have to find out the hazard that could affect that area. Like Dr. Harjeet Kaur said, there can be we will share this template for your convenience. So what you have to do, you just have to identify what type of hazard can actually affect that area. Suppose when you consider the water and climatic to water and climatic related disasters. So what type of hazard can affect your organization that is located in that area? Suppose the flood, whether it is whether that site is affected, it can be affected by flood or the cyclone. So you just have to mention whether it can be affected by that or not. So in that, if you can see in the first table, you just have to identify that. And along with the hazard identification, you also have to carry out the vulnerability of that. So once you have identified what type of hazard can affect your area, you have to go on with one step ahead. You just have to identify what are the vulnerabilities, whether the occurrence of that flood in that area or affecting flood affecting your sites is high, moderate, or low. And if it is high, what are the physical vulnerabilities? What are the social vulnerabilities? What is the ecological vulnerability of that hazard? So you have to identify that, and you have to list it down. And this template we will share with all the participants. We'll share it in group also. So one by one, you have to carry out this hazard identification and vulnerability assessment for all the hazards. Suppose for water related, flood, cyclone, for geological related such as landslides. If you are in hilly areas, you will consider more of landslides, like dam failure. So similarly, like accident related disaster also, if you have seen that there is forest fire, like the mine flooding, oil spill. So you have to consider every disaster and see which disaster can really affect your organization, your site, and try to come up with the vulnerability assessment. So based on that, again, tomorrow we will give you an assignment. So based on your this finding and tomorrow assignment, it will help you to come up with a certain plan. So for today's assignment, so we will restrict ourselves to hazard identification and vulnerability identification. So about submission, kindly note that you have to submit this assignment on or after 27 November. So don't be in a hurry, because there will be some more assignments, and that assignment has to be submitted in elearning.nidm@outlook.com. And please, while you have to notice one thing, that while sending the email, please ensure that you have written the subject as 3-day online training program on disaster management from 25 to 27 hours, so that we can easily identify for which assignment you have submitted. And also please note that while submitting the assignment, you have written your name properly and your designation and affiliation, so that we can demarcate the participants. And one more thing, you can carry out this assignment in group also. If you have a large group, you carry out this assignment in group. You just have to mention the name of the group members and their email IDs, so that we can identify the members and their designation and affiliation. So we will share this template with all the participants. So you just have to carry out this. You can carry out this in your handwritten also, and you can carry out this in this Word file also. So that's all for the assignment. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Raju Thapa, for briefing about the assignment. And with this, we draw the curtain of the first day of 3 days training program on disaster management. But before that, I thank our inaugural session dignitaries, Sri Sushil Chandra Mishra, Chairman and Managing Director, All India Limited, and Professor Surya Prakash, Head GMR Division, NIDM, and the speakers of technical session, Sri Dilip Kumar Das, Resident Chief Executive, Sri Prashanta Borkoti, Executive Director, HR&A, and Ms. Aarti Das, General Manager, L&D from Field Headquarter of Oil, and Dr. Harjeet Kaur, Young Professional, GMR Division, NIDM, for enlightening the participant through their experiences, wisdom, and expertise. Tomorrow, the session will start at the same time, that is at 11 a.m., but the link will be active from 10:30 a.m. So join us back tomorrow with the same link. Thank you, everyone. I will request host to kindly close the meeting for today.
Okay, sir. Okay, sir.